Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Mentor Spotlight. I'd like to introduce Enrique Levin. Enrique is an entrepreneur, professor, mentor, and investor with over 20 years of experience and founder of 11 Solutions, a company that helps entrepreneurs succeed. Thank you for being here, Enrique.
My pleasure, Sarah. Thank you for the invitation.
So I know that in your career, you must have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of startups. In your opinion, what are the most common mistakes entrepreneurs make?
Very interesting question. And yes, I meet with hundreds of startups every year. And it's funny because some things come up over and over and over again. So I see entrepreneurship as a scientific experiment. Every startup is a scientific experiment, and there are things you're trying to figure out, basically. And there are four main things you need to discover as a startup. Who your market is, what your product is, how you grow, and how you make money. Those are basically the four main components of a startup or a business in general, right? So there are three main, I guess, mistakes that startups make, and one that is not a proper mistake, but it's still a decision that sometimes I don't understand. So basically in the beginning, you get the choice of building a product and then figuring out a market, or finding the market and then developing a product for that market. And most entrepreneurs tend to choose building a product to then going out there and trying to find a market for it. And usually they've overbuilt it. It's a very expensive option. And it's really, really hard and expensive to get a market for a product that is as you think it should be, right? If instead of that, you first find a market, figure out a way to acquire it, like for example, by building a landing page and getting their email and then emailing them and trying to get them to buy, even if you don't have the product, and then build a product for them, it's a much easier path towards product market fit. So it's not a proper mistake, but it's something that I would advise always. First, acquiring the market, not just researching. Doing proper market research might help you, but the reality is that as a startup, you're operating with micro markets of early adopters usually that don't really adapt to like market statistics. You have to go out there and try. So that's my first piece of advice, I guess. Not a proper mistake, but a great opportunity to find the market and then develop a product for it. Then there are three main mistakes, I would say. The first one I call it the piggyback failure, and it happens a ton. Basically, you start with one feature or with one service, and then that you find it hard to continue moving forward because you're having a hard time acquiring customers, or they're too expensive, or your product is not good enough for them, or several other reasons. And then you start developing features to try to supplement that, and you end up with a tree of features you don't need. This happens a lot in marketing, for example, when you say, let's do something like, let's say a Facebook campaign, and then you create a content campaign for Facebook, and you create a ton of content, you get a ton of likes and follows and shares and so on, but no sales at all, right? And then you feel committed to continue doing that content, even though it's not generating anything for your business. And then you start doing something else like, hey, let's start a blog. And then that blog maybe generates hundreds of thousands of visits monthly. And that might be great, but it's not generating maybe any sales. And then you continue doing that. And then you develop a TikTok campaign and then some magazine articles, and you start developing, it's one of those multi-channel branding strategies, which are a really bad idea for a startup, because you want a funnel that is super short, people with intention of purchase, and you wanna make it as quick and as cheap as possible to convert a customer. So you're looking for one source, really. Any startup that has many channels of marketing in the beginning tends to be like a red light for me. So that's one of the biggest mistakes. The second one, I would guess, is trying to solve all four problems at once. This is a classic, by the way, because people are used to building like canvases and business plans instead of going out there and testing their startup. And so what happens is that they have to think about the size of the market and how they're going to grow and how they're going to monetize in many cases, and many other problems that are completely irrelevant when you're seeking product market fit. You just want a product or service that helps a customer, period. Right? You don't even have to charge. I mean, if you charge, great. I'm not saying don't charge. I'm not saying don't acquire customers. I'm just saying that's not your objective. You're looking for product market fit. So trying to think about growth and profit when you're thinking about product market fit is a waste of time. I believe in focusing on few things, on the ones that matter, like Pareto, just taking like any problem, dividing it into small pieces and taking only the few pieces that will make a big difference, and doing that at every step, right? And the way to avoid that problem is to not worry about how you're going to grow or how you're going to make money. In the beginning, it's just about adding value to customers. Or if you have to charge because you have costs for your product, then charge as little as possible, because you want as little friction as possible to acquire customers to then discover what your product market fit is. And the third one is actually quite interesting, and it's tied to this second one. When a company, let's say, takes the leap of faith, or an entrepreneur takes the leap of faith of saying, hey, I have product market fit, right? Because it is a leap of faith. There's no like, of course, you can use data, and in theory, every time you make a change, you should see improvements, and eventually it's sort of a logarithmic, like eventually you'll see it become flat. And you wanna pretty much call product market fit when you don't have any more growth thanks to changes in your product or your service. So at that point, startups sort of have a choice. The choice is either focus on growth, which means they're going to make as little money as possible from each customer and therefore get many more customers, or make money out of every customer and reinvest 100% of it to grow faster. Many startups even go to take investment or loans to grow faster. I don't necessarily advise that. I believe in sustainable growth. I think you should make before you spend. That said, I respect other options. And the other option is to focus on profit, right? Profit means you are going to have few customers that pay a lot, and they're much harder to get usually, right? And the problem is trying to solve both at the same time. The reality is, yes, of course you can charge, of course you can get customers, but your strategic focus should be one or the other. And even getting confused tends to be a problem. Why? Because they're opposing forces, right? The more profit you want to make, the less customers you're going to have. The more customers you want to have, the less profit you're going to make out of each one. And therefore, they dictate how you make decisions in the company. And so usually I recommend choosing one and sticking with it. Even mature companies like Apple or WeWork, have proven that changing an idea from going to growth to profit kind of does make sense. So I guess those are the main mistakes the startup makes.
Very interesting. Thank you. So we've been over what can go wrong. Now I want to talk about what goes right. So what are the keys for to be a successful entrepreneur?
Well, that's quite interesting. The first one is to follow the scientific method. Like, that is a must. We have the tools, we have the technology nowadays to actually test anything super cheaply, like build a landing page, build a product or something that looks like a product, and go out there and sell it, right? Like just build an experiment and run your experiment in a control environment and measure everything and figure out what works and stop doing what doesn't work. That said, there are two like psychological factors out there to say, maybe even neurological. Fear and bias, basically. And the best entrepreneur will have no fear and no bias. And this is something I deal with, right? Because I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've done a ton of startups, and therefore I have a lot of bias. I have a lot of things that I think I know. And yes, in some cases it helps me, but in many cases I have to do the hard work of sort of forgetting what I know and using the tools I have learned through this path to discover the truth in every startup, right? And not assume things. You have no idea how many times I've ran an A/B test on a landing page and discovered things that are completely counterintuitive or completely different or opposite to results I have found in similar startups in the same market sometimes. Like every startup is a universe, and you should follow the scientific method. So bias tends to be an issue. So it's a great opportunity having no bias. Therefore, entrepreneurs that are younger tend to be better. And here comes the other item, which is fear, right? And it's sort of opposite, right? The younger entrepreneurs have more fear of going out there and trying things, of like they're afraid that their value of their brand is going to go down when the brand has no value at all, for example, right? Like the fear of cold calling someone and trying to sell your product, right? There's nothing wrong with trying to do that. And it's not that hard. So I actually work really hard to help entrepreneurs get rid of the fear, right? Like give them the tools just to go out there and try it and discover if it works or not, right? Instead of just hearing tons of advice or doing investor pitches and getting or accepted or rejected by investors without even trying something. It's about going out there, building an MVP, testing it, and seeing what happens. So I think no fear, no bias, and focus on the scientific method, and you will win. And always remember the story of the turtle and the hare, right? The hare will always lose the race. So my advice: be the turtle. You're not in a rush. This is not about building a unicorn. I've never seen a unicorn. You probably have never seen a unicorn. Therefore, don't try to build a unicorn. Try to build a sustainable business that will generate value for you, for your employees, for your customers, and for everyone involved.
So it's all about fear and bias. Very interesting. So I was wondering if you could share with us, what exactly does Levin Solutions do? What do you do?
Sure. So we were born by, I don't believe in disrupting. So we were born by finding a layer of value that was missing, basically. So between a startup going to an international level accelerator like Mass Challenge, for example, and getting an idea of how to build a business, getting some traction, and then the investor, right, who is looking to get returns in 5 to 10 years. And most startups are not ready for that. You need to be pretty mature to be able to actually take on an investor. Not saying you can't take it, but it's not really advised, in my opinion. So what I do is I help, I meet with 3 to 5 new finalists of accelerators worldwide online for an hour to try to help them get some value. This is pro bono work. This is also how I assess startups. So we do a lot of work to evaluate and analyze all the startups that are finalists and accelerators, like, for example, Mass Challenge. And so we choose a few of them. We meet with them, I don't know, 3 to 5 per week, approximately. And then out of those, we select approximately 10 per year. And we spend up to 3 months working with them. I believe in just getting at it, basically. I don't think interviews are great to evaluate people. So working together through a test period is really valuable to me. It's also how we discover if we work together well or not. And so we spend up to 3 months meeting once a week for an hour with these entrepreneurs, usually 10 startups a year. Until there, it's all pro bono work. In other words, we're just adding value to tens, if not hundreds of startups every year. And out of that, we select 1 or 2 startups per year. That's it. We believe in quality over quantity. We're looking for entrepreneurs that show that they are going to be entrepreneurs in the future. Basically, we are looking for people that are committed with the entrepreneur path, not necessarily the project, because I've failed hundreds of times. Yes, I've had over 30 successes, but I failed hundreds of times. And so I'm not looking for the best startup. I'm looking for the best entrepreneur that has the right mentality and the right values. And so that 1 or 2, we usually sign a 2-year deal to work with them up to 5 hours a week, actively helping them succeed. So what I found is entrepreneurs, they can use, but that's not what they need. Advice is not what they need. Money is not what they need. What they need is someone that has done it before, that or has done something similar before, that has the methods to discover the truth in the specific type of company they're building, and so helps them actively fill in the gaps, and then hire and create a team and delegate, document, and all of that. And also someone that is a sort of a bouncing wall on an ongoing basis, besides actively helping, also strategically helping figure out what's the best course of action to discover the truth at every step. Because it is a never-ending path of discovery to be in a startup. Even when you're in a mature company, it's less, but it's still ongoing. So that's pretty much what we do. We also teach a couple of courses with some schools, experiential entrepreneurship courses, and we have a paid program for entrepreneurs that are at a very early stage that is called Achieving Traction Mentorship, where they pay for 8 weeks. We meet once a week. And these are usually entrepreneurs that are at the idea stage and they want to develop their first MVP. And in those 8 weeks, they learn how to build landing pages, how to do email campaigns, how to manage a CRM, how to build a funnel, how to do analytics, SEO, all of that, all the tools basically to create a minimum viable product and go out there and test their startup. And we have quite a track record for successes on both programs.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time, Enrique.
It's my pleasure, Sarah. Have a good night.
You too. Goodbye.